Getting a new drug to patients is usually this super slow, very deliberate process. But what if you could get a life-saving medicine out to the public while you're still running the final safety checks? Today, we're diving into something called concurrent validation, a really high-stakes strategy that does exactly that. So when you're making drugs, there are basically two main ways to prove your process actually works. The gold standard, right, is prospective validation. You complete all your tests, you run 3 successful batches, prove everything's perfect, and then you can start selling. But there's this other path, concurrent validation. With this one, you are validating your process while you are selling the very first commercial batches. It's kind of like flying the plane while you're still finishing the final safety checks. And that, of course, begs a huge question, right? I mean, given the massive responsibility of making safe medicines, why would any company, or any regulator for that matter, ever sign off on what seems like a way riskier path? It just feels like it goes against every principle of quality assurance. Well, the answer comes down to a very deliberate and actually a deeply ethical calculation. See, this isn't about taking a shortcut, not at all. It's about weighing the incredible benefit to the patient against the risk of an unproven process and having that benefit win out overwhelmingly. And there's actually a formal name for this ethical math. It's called the benefit-risk ratio. This is the official documented justification. And the key word here is significant. The benefit to the patient can't just be some minor thing. It has to be life-changing or even life-saving to even begin to consider this approach. The driving force is always urgent patient need. So what does that look like in the real world? Well, we're talking about very specific, very exceptional situations. Think about orphan drugs for these incredibly rare diseases where you might only make a handful of batches a year. Or what about radiopharmaceuticals that have a shelf life measured in hours, maybe days? You literally don't have time for prospective validation. In cases like these, waiting to validate could mean the patient never gets the medicine at all. Okay, so if the why is this huge patient benefit, then the how has to be, well, a totally bulletproof plan. This calculated risk is only okay if you have a meticulous playbook that is designed for zero error. This is not something you can just decide to do on the fly. And this really shows you the documentation hierarchy you need. It starts at the very top, the big picture, with the validation master plan. That's your overall site strategy. Then you drill down to the specific protocol for the product itself. Those are the tactics. All of this has to be backed up by a formal quality risk management exercise that justifies why you're taking this path. And only after a successful run does it all get wrapped up in a final validation report. See how each document builds on the last one? So here's the crucial point, and it absolutely cannot be overstated. Concurrent validation is not validation light. The protocol, the acceptance criteria, the number of tests you run, the rigor, all of it has to be completely identical to what you do for a standard prospective validation. The only thing that changes is the timing. You're not cutting corners. You're just rearranging the schedule under some pretty intense pressure. All right, so now we get to the execution phase. This is where the plan meets reality. The first batches are being made for real patients. This isn't some test run. This is the real deal. And everyone involved is basically walking a tightrope. And right in the middle of this pressure cooker is this unique European role, the qualified person, or QP. This individual is legally, personally on the hook for every single batch that gets released. So when they sign off on that first concurrent batch, they're releasing it based on only partial data, knowing the full picture still depends on batches that haven't even been made yet. I mean, the weight of that decision is just enormous. So how does that QP manage all that risk? With data. Tons of data. As you can see here, a routine production batch might need a certain number of samples, right? But a concurrent validation batch, it requires way more. They call this intensive sampling, and it means you are gathering every single piece of information you possibly can to feel confident in that one specific batch, even when the full validation picture isn't complete yet. But this brings us to the nightmare scenario. Imagine you've released batch number 1 and batch number 2 to the market. They're already with patients, and then the data for batch number 3 comes back, and it's a failure. It's out of specification. What do? The entire validation is now in jeopardy, and patient safety is right there on the line. This is precisely why you can't even start concurrent validation without a pre-approved market withdrawal strategy. It's the emergency brake. The second a failure happens, this plan kicks in. Distribution stops immediately. An investigation starts to find the root cause. A formal risk assessment is done on the batches that are already out in the world. And if there is any doubt at all about patient safety, a full recall is triggered. You have to plan for failure before you even begin. Okay, so let's say the validation batches are successful and the final report gets signed. The story doesn't end there. This whole intense period of scrutiny is really designed to transition into a long-term state of control. It's all part of a much bigger life cycle approach to quality. And this timeline here, it shows that journey perfectly. You move from development, you go through that intense scrutiny of concurrent validation, and you get to the successful final report. But that report then becomes the baseline for the next stage of the life cycle, ongoing process verification. All the intense learning you did on those first few batches informs how you monitor that process for the rest of its commercial life. And that really is the ultimate goal here, isn't it? You're taking this exceptional, high-stakes situation and you're using all the knowledge you gain from it to establish a state of total control. You want to turn that initial uncertainty into a predictable, routine, and continuously improving manufacturing process that is safe for patients for years and years to come. So in the end, concurrent validation is absolutely not a shortcut. It's an incredibly scrutinized pathway for getting critical medicines to patients who desperately need them. And it kind of leaves us with a powerful thought to chew on. By putting a process under this kind of real-world